They found something that shouldn't exist, buried 15 feet underground in a place where no human had walked for over 2,000 years. Archaeologists uncovered an object so advanced, so impossibly complex, that when they first saw it, they thought it had to be a hoax. But it wasn't. And the moment they realized what they were looking at, everything we thought we knew about ancient civilization changed forever. Welcome to the world where history becomes a crime scene, where scientists become detectives, and where every shovel of dirt could rewrite human history. This is the story of how modern archaeologists solve ancient mysteries. Let me take you back to 1900. A group of Greek sponge divers were working off the coast of a tiny island called Antikythera. They were diving deep, looking for sea sponges to sell, when one of them noticed something strange on the ocean floor. A shipwreck, but not just any shipwreck. This ship was ancient, and it was filled with treasures, marble statues, bronze sculptures, pottery. The divers had stumbled onto one of the most significant archaeological finds in history, and they didn't even know it yet. They hauled everything up, brought it all back to Athens. Experts rushed in to examine the artifacts. Everyone was excited about the statues, the coins, the jewelry. But there was this one thing, a corroded lump of bronze and wood. Crusty, ugly, looked like junk. Honestly, most people ignored it. It sat in a museum storage room for months, just gathering dust while everyone focused on the pretty stuff. Then one day, it cracked open, and inside, someone saw gears. Dozens of them. Interlocking bronze gears, precisely cut. Arranged in a mechanism so sophisticated that it shouldn't have existed for another 1,000 years. The archaeologists stared at this thing like they were looking at a smartphone pulled from a Roman tomb. What the hell was it? This is where the real detective work began. See, archaeology isn't what most people think. It's not just digging up old stuff and putting it in museums. Real archaeology is like solving a murder mystery. Except the crime happened thousands of years ago. There are no witnesses. And half the evidence has rotted away. Dr. Derek de Sala Price, a physicist turned historian, became obsessed with this corroded lump of gears. He spent years studying it, X-raying it, measuring every tiny fragment. And slowly, piece by piece, he started to understand what he was looking at. It was a computer. An ancient analog computer built around 100 BC, the Antikythera Mechanism, as it came to be known, could predict solar eclipses, track the moon's phases, calculate the positions of planets, and even predict the dates of the ancient Olympic Games. The Greeks had built a machine that wouldn't be matched in complexity until the astronomical clocks of medieval Europe over 1,000 years later. But here's where it gets even crazier. In 2006, a team of researchers used cutting-edge CT scanning technology on the mechanism. They could see inside the corrosion, read inscriptions that had been invisible for centuries. And what they found was an instruction manual, written in ancient Greek. Tiny letters, a user's guide for operating this incredible machine. Imagine that. You're an archaeologist in 2006, reading a 2,000-year-old instruction manual for a computer that shouldn't exist. You're literally holding a conversation with someone across two millennia. And they're teaching you how their technology works. That's the moment when archaeology becomes magic. But not every mystery gets solved so cleanly. Let me tell you about Göbekli Tepe. In 1963, a team of archaeologists surveyed a hill in southeastern Turkey. They saw some broken stones sticking out of the ground. Their report said, quote, "Nothing of interest," and they left. For 30 years, nobody cared about that hill. Then, in 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt looked at that same hill and thought, wait a minute, those aren't just broken stones, those are carved. He started digging. What he found changed everything we thought we knew about human civilization. Massive stone pillars, arranged in circles, covered in intricate carvings of animals. Foxes, lions, scorpions, vultures, Some of the pillars weighed over 10 tons. And here's the kicker, they were carved and erected by people who weren't supposed to have that capability. Because Göbekli Tepe is over 11,000 years old. Think about that date for a second. 11,000 years. That's 6,000 years before Stonehenge. 4,000 years before the pyramids. This temple complex was built before humans had invented writing, before we had the wheel, before we'd even figured out agriculture. According to everything we thought we knew, the people who built Göbekli Tepe were supposed to be simple hunter-gatherers. Small bands wandering around, looking for food, living in temporary camps. They weren't supposed to be capable of organizing hundreds of workers to carve and move 10-ton stones. They weren't supposed to have the social structure, the leadership, the planning ability to create something this massive. But they did. And suddenly, archaeologists had to ask a very uncomfortable question. What else are we wrong about? Dr. Schmidt spent the rest of his life excavating Göbekli Tepe. He died in 2014, but the work continues. And the more they dig, the weirder it gets. Ground-penetrating radar shows there are at least 20 more stone circles still buried. They've only excavated about 5% of the site. And here's something that still has archaeologists scratching their heads. After using Göbekli Tepe for about 1,000 years, the people who built it deliberately buried it. They filled in the whole complex with dirt and rubble, on purpose. Like they were hiding it, or preserving it, or performing some ritual we can't even begin to understand. Why would you spend generations building something incredible, use it for 1,000 years, and then bury it? Nobody knows. That's the thing about archaeological mysteries. Sometimes you solve one question only to uncover 10 more. Now, let me tell you about the time archaeologists became actual crime scene investigators. In 2009, a team was excavating a lake bed in Sweden. They were pulling up artifacts from around 8,000 years ago. Stone Age stuff, tools, pottery, animal bones. Then they found a skull. Then another one. Then another. 11 human skulls, mounted on wooden stakes, submerged in what used to be a shallow lake. Some of the skulls had pieces of other skulls jammed inside them. Others had been carefully decorated before being placed on the stakes. The team leader, Dr. Frederick Hallgren, stood in the excavation pit and realized he was looking at a crime scene, or a ritual site, or maybe both. But whatever happened here, it was deliberate, it was complex, and it was disturbing. The question was, what happened? This is where modern archaeology gets incredibly sophisticated. The team brought in forensic analysts, the same people who work on modern murder cases. They examined cut marks on the bones, looking for patterns. They analyzed the skulls for trauma, for signs of violence. What they discovered was fascinating. Most of the skulls showed no signs of violent death, no fractures, no cut marks from weapons. These people weren't killed and then mounted. They died naturally, and then later, maybe months or years later, their skulls were removed from wherever they'd been buried, carefully prepared and mounted on stakes in the lake. Some skulls had fragments of other people's skulls inserted into them. A piece of an adult skull placed inside a child's skull. A piece of a female skull placed inside a male skull. The archaeologists stood there trying to understand what this meant. Was it a memorial? A religious ceremony? Some kind of ancestor worship we can't comprehend. And here's the detail that made it even more mysterious. One of the skulls had a piece of rope still preserved inside it, threaded through the hole at the base of the skull. Someone had strung these skulls up like decorations. 8,000 years ago, people stood at the edge of this lake and performed a ritual so specific, so carefully planned that they left behind a scene archaeologists are still trying to understand today. You know what's incredible? We have all this technology, ground-penetrating radar, DNA analysis, carbon dating, three-dimensional CT scanning. We can read scrolls that were burned into charcoal 2,000 years ago. We can extract DNA from bones that are thousands of years old and tell you what color hair someone had. But sometimes, the biggest mysteries are solved by someone just paying attention. In 1991, two hikers in the Alps saw something brown sticking out of the ice. They thought it was trash, or maybe a dead mountaineer. They reported it to authorities. When the police arrived, they tried to chip the body out of the ice with a jackhammer and an ice pick. They damaged it pretty badly, actually, because they assumed it was a modern corpse. Then someone noticed the copper axe lying next to the body. Everything stopped. Archaeologists rushed to the scene. They carefully excavated the body, and when they got it back to the lab, they ran tests and their jaws hit the floor. The body was 5,300 years old, older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge. And because he'd been frozen solid for over 5,000 years, he was perfectly preserved. Skin, organs, hair, clothes, equipment, everything. They named him Ötzi the Iceman. And he became one of the most studied individuals in archaeological history. Scientists examined every inch of Ötzi's body, and what they found told an incredible story. He had tattoos, 61 of them, made by making small cuts in the skin and rubbing in charcoal. Most of the tattoos were located over his joints, his knees, his ankles, his lower back, places where he had arthritis. The tattoos were probably some kind of pain treatment. He had Lyme disease. They found the bacteria in his DNA. His last meals were preserved in his stomach. Red deer, wild goat, and some kind of grain. He'd eaten about 8 hours before he died. He was wearing sophisticated cold weather gear, a cloak made of woven grass, a coat made from different animal skins sewn together, a bearskin hat, waterproof shoes stuffed with grass for insulation. This wasn't some primitive caveman. Ness was a person who lived in a complex society with advanced knowledge of survival, medicine, and craftsmanship. But the biggest discovery came when they did a full CT scan of his body. There was an arrowhead lodged in his left shoulder, and there was a deep cut on his right hand that had happened a day or two before he died. Suddenly, Ötzi's story became clear. He'd been in a fight. He'd gotten injured, that cut on his hand. Then, a day or two later, he was climbing through the mountains when someone shot him from behind with an arrow. The arrow severed an artery. He probably bled to death within minutes. 5,300 years ago, a man was murdered in the Alps, and in 1991, archaeologists found his body and solved the case. This is what modern archaeology really is. It's detective work. It's solving puzzles with incomplete pieces. It's using science, intuition, and sometimes just dumb luck to reach across thousands of years and understand the lives of people who are long gone. Every single artifact tells a story. Every burial, every building, every broken piece of pottery is evidence in a mystery that spans human history. And we're getting better at solving these mysteries every single day. Right now, there are archaeologists using satellite imagery to find ancient cities hidden under jungle canopy. There are teams using DNA analysis to track human migration patterns from 50,000 years ago. There are researchers using artificial intelligence to decode languages that have been dead for thousands of years. We're living in the golden age of archaeology. We're answering questions that people have wondered about for centuries. And we're discovering that ancient humans were way more sophisticated, way more capable, and way more interesting than we ever gave them credit for. Because here's the thing, these weren't primitive people stumbling around in the Dark Ages. These were humans, just like us. Same brains, same creativity, same capacity for brilliance. They just lived in a different time. And when archaeologists uncover their stories, when we solve these ancient mysteries, we're not just learning about the past, we're learning about ourselves, about what humans are capable of, about how we've always been explorers, inventors, artists, and dreamers. So the next time you hear about archaeologists finding something, pay attention, because they're not just digging up old stuff, they're solving mysteries. They're cracking cases that have been cold for thousands of years. They're detectives in the greatest mystery of all the story of humanity. And trust me, the discoveries they're making right now, they're going to blow your mind. If you want to see more stories like this, hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started. The ancient world has secrets we haven't even begun to uncover, and we're going to explore every single one of them. Thanks for watching, and remember, history isn't boring. We've just been telling it wrong. See you in the next one.